This generation, PlayStation has done an excellent job with several different genres, but one thing I have continuously seen fans be so excited for is their Japanese support, and it really is true. Not only has Japanese developers made a bit of a comeback this generation, pumping out several high-quality games, but on top of that, they have released several great JRPG games on the PlayStation 4. Because there is so many, and it's often hard to choose what to buy next, I decided to do a list of the top 15 best JRPG games on the PlayStation 4. As always, I will only be naming one game per franchise unless they're vastly different, and do remember this is only an opinion. Yours may be different, and if it is, post it in the comments below so others can discover those games as well. With that said, let's get right into it. At number 15, I have ODIN Sphere, which is a 2D side-scrolling action JRPG. And the first thing you probably noticed is how good this game looks, because the art direction and animations just pop off the screen. It's vibrant, colorful, and each animation runs so smoothly. But that would mean nothing if the game wasn't fun, and luckily, it is. The action-packed combat is just as good as the beautiful scenery, and even though this is a remake of an old PlayStation 2 game, the game holds up incredibly well even to this day. In fact, I would say this is one of the best remakes on the entire market. Monster Hunter has always been immensely popular in Japan, but it never really seemed to have reached the same hype in the West, or at least until Monster Hunter World released. Now it suddenly has become one of the most successful games of this generation, and it's well deserved. Monster Hunter World is all about, well, hunting different monsters, grinding to get better armor and weapons, and it just always feels like there is something to do to progress your character further and further. And even though Monster Hunter World can be a little bit grindy, the combat and the creative monster designs will have you coming back for more and more. As an added bonus, it also has cooperative gameplay, which makes the hunt even more exhilarating. One thing's for sure though, Monster Hunter World is a very addicting game, and don't be too surprised if you end up playing this for well over 100 hours. Oftentimes when you hear about the best JRPG games of all time, the Legend of Heroes franchise tends to pop up in that conversation. Though it's a franchise that is also often overlooked, and it really shouldn't be. With The Legend of Heroes Cold Steel, you will be playing the role of a student, or at least in the first game. And that really is the thing about this franchise. If you buy into Trails of Cold Steel, I really do recommend you to start from the very beginning, as all three games is an interconnected story. Though it is a very good story. It may be a little bit intimidating, but it is worth the time investment if you like old school turn-based JRPG games. It also takes note from the Persona franchise and allows you to bond with other classmates and characters. And overall, Trails of Cold Steel just has a very interesting story that you will find yourself pushing forward to know more and more. Many games today has us play the hero, or the chosen one that is there to save the world from an evil threat. Though in Tales of Berseria, you instead take on the role of an anti-hero with a dark past, and this goes beyond just the protagonist, and even the supporting cast can be a bit sinister, where each has their own unique dark stories. The protagonist may start off as an innocent girl, but after a few events and time passes, she becomes a little bit more ruthless, and some may even consider her as heartless. It's this dark tone filled with revenge that makes Berseria an interesting but different title. It also helps that the overall gameplay is enjoyable with freeform combat, and artistically, it's a pretty world to explore. Valkyrie Chronicles 4 may be the most unique game on this entire list. Not only does it have a very distinct cel-shaded art style to it, but the way the combat works really sets it apart from other games. It has this strategic turn-based combat system that has you free roaming around an almost war zone-like battlefield, so positioning is just as important as raw power. And that isn't all, because it also has a very good story, and I think if you like strategic RPGs with a good story, then Valkyrie Chronicles is one of the best. Disgaea as a franchise may not look like much, but thanks to its wacky story and characters about demons, it is immediately one of my favorite JRPG franchises, and Disgaea 5 is one of the best in the entire series. Though the story itself is goofy and that may not be for everybody, I think it's very enjoyable. And then there is the tactical combat that you can chain combos together, choose your own party, and endlessly level up your characters to absurd levels. Like, no joke, you can actually level up each character like 999 times, and that isn't even considering the weapon leveling. It's a game that can go on for as long as you want and well past the main storyline if you enjoy it enough. When Level 5 and Studio Ghibli partnered up to make Ni no Kuni, it immediately brought forth a ton of hype, but I don't think anybody expected it to be as good as what it was. Ni no Kuni's world just brings so much childlike wonder, and you almost feel like you're in an anime world itself. The animations are just brilliantly done, and even after all these years, it's still a beautiful game to look at. It also has a very good story, and I think it actually does have one of the more memorable intros for JRPG games, and can be very emotional. From that point forward, you're kind of sucked into the world, and even the combat is fun. It's like a mix of Pokemon with the monster catching and evolutions, but it also has a freeform combat system. I think Ni no Kuni kind of goes down as an instant classic, and I should also mention that there is a sequel, though Ni no Kuni 2 can be played as a standalone title. It's also good, though if I were to just choose one, I would definitely say the first Ni no Kuni. So I cheated here and chose another Tales of game on this list, and that's because I think both are different enough to be included, especially in terms of tone. Tales of Vesperia is actually one of my favorite JRPG games ever, and that is mainly because its story and characters. I think when it just comes to the story and the characters, it's one of my all-time favorites, and each character just kind of has this chemistry, and they all mesh together with their own unique personalities. And even though this is a remake of an old Xbox 360 game, it still looks great today, and it has a timeless art style to it. Like other Tales games, it's rocking a freeform combat system, but I think if you're like me and really want a good story, then Vesperia is among the very best. Nioh is very much like Dark Souls, though it can completely stand on its own as a separate and unique game. It's got the Team Ninja flavor to it and offers an over-the-top story with a deep and rewarding combat system. The monsters and bosses are also brilliantly designed, so I think if you have played the Dark Souls franchise and you like that, then Nioh is right up there around the same quality. It even mixes things up, and you may find yourself enjoying it even more. People seem to have a love-hate relationship with the massively popular Kingdom Hearts franchise. But what Square Enix has achieved with Kingdom Hearts is no small feat. They have combined this Disney-esque world with a more dramatic tone that you find in anime. Even early on in the franchise, it had a mix of Final Fantasy characters and Disney characters, but Kingdom Hearts 3 in specific is such a step up in terms of production value. It definitely offers the best gameplay in the franchise, even if it was a tad easy when it launched. The story is also highly interesting, though it also is very convoluted, which is one of the reasons fans have such a love-hate relationship with it. Nonetheless, this is one of the best JRPG games out right now, and it's an experience I would recommend to almost anyone. It really doesn't make much sense on how Dragon Quest has failed to become as popular in the West as it has in Japan. Dragon Quest is a long-running franchise that has continuously put out some of the all-time great JRPGs, and with Dragon Quest XI, it's arguably the best in the entire franchise. And the thing about Dragon Quest XI is that it keeps it kind of old school where the combat is turn-based, so fans of old school JRPG games should end up really liking Dragon Quest XI. The story is good as well, where you play as Eleven, who is considered the Dark Spawn, and it's a fun ride from beginning to end. And one thing you may notice is the art style looks kind of similar to Dragon Ball, and that's because it is coming from the same art director, so if you like that type of art style, that's an added bonus. Final Fantasy 15 is kind of a divisive title where some fans were not overly pleased with the launch, but as time went on, Final Fantasy 15 got better and better with all the expansions, especially in terms of its story, which I found to personally be beautiful. I think it's a very emotional story, and I really like the boy band-like cast, and they had a lot of chemistry with one another. It is a very fun and flashy action-packed combat system, and the world is one of my favorite worlds in all video games. It is absolutely stunning and so creative, and this goes beyond just the world. The characters look amazing, and I think even if you don't like previous Final Fantasy games, there is a very good possibility that you may end up liking Final Fantasy 15. The only thing that I am highly upset about with Final Fantasy 15 is the decision from Square Enix to stop development on more DLC. Persona 5 can be yet another polarizing game, but those who end up liking Persona 5 usually end up loving it and consider it to be one of the best JRPG games of all time. And there is two sides of the coin here. On one side, it's a very stylized game, the combat is excellent, the characters are intriguing, and if you like social aspects where you can develop relationships with the characters, it has that as well. I think what it truly excels at though is with the turn-based combat system and getting a plethora of personas to fight with. The dungeons are very creative and the best in the franchise with all the different settings. Each character has their own unique personality, and it does have a very good twist on the story, especially later on. On the other side of things, some people consider Persona 5 to be a bit of a slog, as it is over 100 hours long just for the main story alone, and the story can be a little slow at times to pick up. Though if you are okay with those things, this may end up being one of your favorite games ever. I absolutely loved NIER Automata. Platinum Games here made one of the most perfect games for me personally. The combat is extremely fun with action-packed sequences, and the thing about NIER Automata is that they aren't afraid to surprise you with new gameplay mechanics. While in one sequence you may be hacking and slashing your way through enemies, in the next sequence you may be playing in an isometric top-down view, shooting enemies while evading incoming attacks. And then the story is one of the most memorable I have ever played. I absolutely just fell in love with this story. It is a bit odd in how you complete it though, because it does ask you to play through multiple playthroughs, and in order to actually finish the game you have to beat it 3 times. But the payoff is like no other. I highly encourage you to stick with it and play NIER Automata. And at number 1 is none other than Bloodborne, and you can also include Dark Souls here. While both does have their differences, they also are very similar in several different ways. But Bloodborne is one of the best games I've ever played in terms of pure gameplay. It puts you into a dark, horror-esque world with grotesque enemies, brilliantly made bosses, and challenges you to beat the game. And this is no easy thing to do either, because just like Dark Souls, it can be very challenging. But it's a faster paced game. It still has a risk-reward mechanic that the Souls franchise is so well known for, and it keeps the game in high tension at all times. While some games focuses on story to draw you in, Bloodborne is all about the gameplay. And unlike its dark atmosphere, it shines bright, and will for years to come. Anyways though, that is it for this video, but if I forgot to mention any game that you like, let me know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, don't forget to hit that bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.